Welcome back, Crackle Addicts. I'm Lupinefiasco. This is Daily Fab Gameplay, and I have a tournament report from battle-hardened Santa Clara. I know we will get back to gameplay reviews on your Daily Fab Gameplay channel, I promise. The next video I publish will be an Aurora gameplay review, but we're just jam-packed with big Tier 2, Tier 3, and Tier 4 events over this month and the next month, so I gotta tell you what's going on. This one was very special for me. I top 4'd this battle-hardened with Aurora. I wasn't expecting to, and that's sort of my takeaway from this event. Very fun event. Went 7-2 over the course of the day. Of course, I'm going to break down my matches for you, but first I'm going to give you my general takeaways from the event. As with my Pro Tour London report, all of these are going to be coming from my Codex journal. If you don't know what the Codex Journal is, you're seeing images of the website on the screen now. The Codex Journal is a really cool tool. It asks many good prompting questions for you to review your games immediately after you finish them. So if you like what I do here on Daily Fab Gameplay and you want to do that in person, then the Codex Journal is going to be the tool for you. I record all of my reflections and my conclusions after my games, and I have found that it's very helpful in reevaluating how I look at certain matchups, in confirming that my plans are correct. So if you do want to get your own Codex Journal, there is a link in the video description below. Use code LUPINE10, that's LUPINE10, at checkout to get 10% off your journal. Also, you can find the deck list that I was using at the Battle Hardened, as well as links to my Blue Sky, Discord, and Patreon. Patrons at the Arc Lightning tier or higher will get the matchup guides for the Aurora deck list, as well as all of my matchup guides for all of my deck lists, and you'll keep access to those even if you stop being a patron. So, my general takeaways for this event, there really aren't that many. We're just off the back of Pro Tour London. So within the course of the last week, I haven't had a ton of time to learn anything new. But my big takeaway from this event is that I am a good flesh and blood player who is capable of topping events. That's a weird thing to say because you would think that I already know that, having topped RTN's Pro Quests, cached callings, and generally done very well for myself, but really not the case. I had a big confidence problem going into Pro Tour London. I think that is why I didn't do so well in the Pro Tour itself or on day 2 of the calling. And so I had a reality check after I got back from the PT over this last week. My team captain reached out, said, really my biggest problem is that I need to get out of my own way and start adjusting my attitude so that I stop thinking of what am I going to do after I'm out of the tournament, after I've lost enough games that I can no longer make top 8, and let's start reframing that into what do I do when I win? What do I do in top 8? Even just looking one game at a time rather than far into the rest of the day. And just that small attitude adjustment really did help. And that, again, seems like such an insignificant little thing. Of course, I should always plan to win, but my local scene, and then even greater scene in California, is so stacked with good players that for a long, long time I've just internalized that I am not one of the best of them. And I, without inflating my ego, need to get to a point where I can go into a tournament expecting that I'm at least capable of winning. I think setting lofty objective-based goals is setting yourself up for disappointment. You should not go into every tournament expecting to win and being disappointed if you do anything but that. But for the most part, don't go to an event saying, what am I going to do when I lose? Go to an event saying, I need to be prepared to win. I can win. I'm going to play my best. I'm going to win the games in front of me, and I will top 8 this event. So that is what I did. Just reframing. I'm going to drive to Santa Clara. It's a 2-hour drive. Let's not think about how early I could get home if I O2 drop. Let's think about, and it'd be just about time to feed my cats when I get home this evening because I won the event. And that was enough. I didn't win. We'll get into why that is. Happy to review my matches over the course of the day, but I did top 4 the event. This is not my best cash prize. I top 32'd the Minneapolis Calling last year and got a little bit more for doing that than I did for top 4ing a Battle Hardened. But top 4ing the Battle Hardened does feel like my biggest accomplishment to date. Just as far as the prestige that comes with it, the honor of being in the top cut compared to being in the top 32 of a calling. Still a great accomplishment for sure. I'm not going to denigrate that or take away from anyone who is top 32 in callings. It's really good. You have to have a very good record to do so. But being in the top cut of a thing just feels great. Feels like you are among the best of the best from that event, and you really did fight your way to get there. So I feel great. Feels really validating, very good. Sets me up very well for my ProQuest season, knowing that I've top 4'd a Battle Hardened. What's taking down a ProQuest? What's top 8'ing or top 4'ing, or even winning one of those? It's easy peasy at this point. All that's left is to just do it. So if you're expecting any grand revelations from this tournament report, I mean, like I said, it's just been a week. Come on, I learned a lot from London, and I'm now just applying those lessons. Got some good practice over the last week, but mostly just working on that confidence. So let's get into the event itself. There were 118 players, which equated to 7 rounds of Swiss, followed by that cut to top 8. Aurora was the most represented hero, followed by Enigma. As is tradition, I only played against 2 Auroras and 1 Enigma. One of the Auroras and the Enigma were both in top cut, so my path to top 8 was full of a lot of random heroes. I don't believe I ever played the same hero twice, certainly not in Swiss, and the only hero that I did play twice over the course of the day was Aurora. So let's just get right into it. My round 1 was against Ethan on Arakni Marionette. This is a hero that I am putting in B tier, at least internally, but based on Arakni's performance lately. Spoiler alert, Marionette did win the Battle Hardened Santa Clara, piloted by Tao Tao Chu. I think I need to at least put Mario in tier A, if not tier S. And depending on how Mario deals with Guardians after the departure of Enigma, Mario could very well be one of, if not the best, aggro deck in the format. I have a basic idea of how to play against Marionette, and I would say that I feel familiar going into the matchup. I treat it like I treat every assassin. I'm bringing in all of my defense reactions. I'm not fat stacking Marionette. I will play a lean 60 and say that this is more of a race than it would be against a hero like Nu or Arakni Huntsman. And I think I am favored in this matchup, or at least Aurora is, not by too much. I put myself at a 55% chance to win, and that is just based on Aurora dealing more damage off the same size of hands. So if Arakni is doing 12 damage off of 4 cards, Aurora is doing 12 damage off of 3 cards. And that isn't always the case. Arakni can draw 4 reactions in a hand, Aurora can draw 4 cards without Go Again, but Aurora's Go Again is a little more insulated from Arakni's disruption if Arakni is only taking 1 card a turn. So I think that Aurora is in a better position to win that game. I won this game at 17 life remaining, and unfortunately my opponent's draws just didn't really work out. I won the die roll, got to go second. My opponent's turn 1 was pitching 2 red reactions to dagger for 1 Go Again. I block for 2, and I do get reacted over the top, so I take 2 damage, get marked, and my opponent flips into red back, which is not even close to being the best Arakni variant, especially this early in the game. They really would have wanted to see Funnel Web or Black Widow. But after that, I just play very good efficient turns. My Arc Lightnings showed up at good moments. I had plenty of Go Again. I did successfully read that my opponent was looking to play out a big take up the mantle turn, so they attack with some dumb stealth attack. I have Shelter from the Storm and 3 other cards in hand. I say no blocks. They go for the Flick Knives, and I respond by discarding Shelter from the Storm, which prevents the 1 point of damage from the flick, so that I do not get marked. And my opponent just stares at the 1 card remaining in their hand, says, no other reactions. I take no damage from the blue Art of Body that is attacking me, and they just move to the end of the turn, arsenaling that take up the mantle, which I did get hit by a few turns later, but it was really under my terms. So that particular turn, I have to deal with Mark of the Black Widow. Flick Knives is still on the board, and they still have that arsenal, which I know for a fact is take up. So I'm expecting this is either going to be Black Widow for 4 or Bonds for, I think it would have been, what is that, 4, 7, 7. I responded to this by playing out 2 Channel Lightning Valleys and using Zap Clappers to reveal an instant from my hand to draw 2 cards. Unfortunately, I did draw 2 Snatches, which then got taken by the Bonds of Agony, so it isn't like I got to keep this massive hand and crack back, but I do have 2 Channel Lightning Valleys on the board, and Arakni has no armor with which to block my 4/4/4. So we end up just getting a massive lead. Arakni did have another pitch 2 red reactions turn to dagger later in the game. So I just got ahead early, stayed ahead over the course of the game, and I think this is why Aurora is favored in the matchup. She's just a little more consistent and does a little more damage on the same number of cards. So I'm 1-0 going into round 2, which I played against Wesley's Cindra. This is a matchup I feel very comfortable in. I think that Cindra is about a B-tier hero, and I'm not interested in revising that assessment anytime soon. My opinion of Cindra is that she was very good in the first 2 weeks of the Hunted format, and then everyone figured out the trick, which is you block, and then she doesn't draw cards. She doesn't do scaling exponential damage. She can do really cool things with Flick Knives, effectively dealing 1 point of damage every turn, and Blood Splattered Vest paying for Breaking Point, Demonstrate Devotion, Hunt the Hunter, Take the Tempo, good chain enders that she effectively pays for free. But even so, if you just block and she doesn't draw, then she isn't doing anything too impressive, and I think Aurora is in a good position to do that, utilizing 8 defense reactions that I had on the list, plus Crown of Providence, Dyadic Carapace, and Zap Clappers. So I won this game at 8 points of life. I did win the die roll, got to go second. I never saw Channel Lightning Valley, which actually made this game extremely close. If Aurora isn't seeing CLV, then she's never able to effectively use Zap Clappers. Her Sigil of Sufferings do block for 4 because Cindra plays AB0 Spell Void 0, but you aren't gaining the extra points from drawing a card from Channel Lightning Valley. And now, if we're talking consistency, Aurora had more consistency than Mario in the last matchup, but Cindra is a lot more consistent than Aurora is, because Aurora does need to block, and depending on how Aurora's hands line up, she might not be able to do that very effectively. She plays a lot of 2 blocks, she plays 12 non-blocks, and you can get put into a position where you need to decide between blocking the Mask of Momentum trigger and dealing damage on your turn. And Channel Lightning Valley is a really good way to do both of those things, but if you aren't seeing those CLVs, then Cindra is going to start creeping up on you in life total, and that is what ended up happening in this game. It was very close. My opponent made a misplay towards the end of the game. I attack with Exude Confidence. For 4, I have 1 card left in hand, and my opponent is at 6. And so he believed that I had Lightning Press in hand and would kill him if he didn't block. So he puts 3 cards from hand and Dragon Scalar Flight Path in front of the Exude to block 7. Of course, my line was going to be Exude Confidence for 4, hope that you take it, go to 2. I use my Snapdragons to give it a go again, and I get to send Second Strike for 4 go again. You need to block it in order to not die, and if you decide to block with Mask of Momentum and Flight Path to go to 1, keeping 4 cards and Flick Knives, then if I draw a Suffering or Burn Up Shock, I win the game. Of course, if my opponent is going to give me 3 cards, then I just say, okay, pass, Arsenal Second Strike, and I drew into an Arc Lightning on the next turn, so I was able to put the game to bed there. We talked about the game after the match. I explained to my opponent, hey, don't just put your entire hand in front of the Exude. If you think I'm going to press you, just block for 4. You're at 6, you can afford to take 3 points of damage, and it's going to be hard for me to kill you on your turn after drawing back up. Also, once you get your opponent to about 10 points of life, Mask of Momentum basically loses its text because your opponent is never going to get hit 3 times in a row, because if they get hit 3 times in a row, they're probably dead. So the draw effect from Mask of Momentum doesn't really matter anymore. Mask is just 2 points of block. So I think my opponent held the Mask of Momentum too long, definitely overcommitted to blocking the Exude. So the next time we play, I'm assuming that I am going to have a much harder game ahead of me, which is why I'm hoping that I can at least see my Channel Lightning Valleys. But I'm 2-0 going into round 3, which I played against James's Verdance. Verdance is a weird hero to sideboard against because there are 2 main builds floating around, and they both win on different axes. So one Verdance build is more of the standard arcane wizard build. She plays Surgeon Aethertide, plays a lot of the spells that either amp the Aethertide and then come into a finisher like Mind Warp, or she plays more of this Bullander style with Wounding Bulls, Felling of the Crowns, Plow Unders, just these big dumb attacks that can be disruptive, and then finishes the game with Storm Striders into Pulsing Aether into Waning Moon. And so I have to decide, how am I going to board for this Verdance who I don't know? And my advice to you boarding against Verdance is just disrespect arcane damage. Verdance, at least in my estimation, is a B tier deck. We are favored to win, even if slightly. So just be aggro, do aggro things. I brought AB0, so Crown of Providence, Spring Tunic, Grasp of the Arknight, and Snapdragon Scalers. And I said, I am just going to do damage faster than you can deal it to me, and I'm going to kill you doing Aurora things. Now, that didn't happen. I lost this game. Verdance was at 1 life when she won. I don't believe anyone high-rolled this game, but I do believe that I low-rolled. So this was a situation, I have 6 blues in my deck against Verdance because I board out my defense reactions. Either she's playing arcane damage and my D-reacts do nothing, or she's the Bullander physical version and my D-reacts would help, but if she just blocks out, plays 4 D-reacts, or blocks with her Felling or Plowing or whatever, then my D-react rots in Arsenal, or I can't pitch it effectively. So I figure I'm hedging on being aggressive, and especially hedging on Verdance being arcane and my D-reacts just being stone unplayable. So I bring in 6 blues. I saw all 6 blues in the top 20 cards of my deck. I pitched them all away. Then I got Mind Warped and started drawing my blues again after I shuffled. I drew blues off of E-Strike, I drew a blue off of Snatch, I drew blue, 2 blue hands multiple times over the game. My Ravenous Rabble flipped a blue. I saw so many blues, and I hate seeing blues as Aurora. Now my sideboard plan says that I cannot help but bring in blues. It is just unfortunate that it happened so many times. Meanwhile, my opponent drew 3 Scours in his opening hand. He did block with 1 of them, but played the other 2, one of which was massively impactful as it destroyed the embodiment of lightning that I really needed to put a turn together. My opponent drew 2 Channel the Millennium Tree. My opponent drew 2 Mind Warps to pair with those Channel the Millennium Trees. The 2 Millennium Trees collectively stayed out for 5 turns. I was just taking a bunch of arcane damage. And I still almost got there, could have gotten there with the race plan, if not for all of these blues. Meanwhile, my opponent had a blue at exactly the right time. He is at 1. I am able to strip his hand down to 1 card. At the end of my turn, I draw into Burn Up Shock, and if my opponent pitches yellow to attack, send Arcane with Surgeon Aethertide, then I just win the game, and unfortunately, he did pitch the blue, so he had the floating resource to pay for Arcane Barrier, and I wasn't able to get the win, and then I was dead on my next turn. So my takeaways here, this game did not change my assessment of the Verdance matchup. I think I was right to bring AB0. Now, AB2 or 3 would have been great with how many blues I was seeing, but I can't hedge on that, because if any of my 2 blue hands are 1 blue hands, then I'm probably doing very well, because I can sword and make an embodiment. If my Rabble flips a red instead of a blue, I win. If my Snatcher E-Strike draws a red instead of a blue, I win. So I think the plan was solid. I think that bringing Tunic was solid. I think that I am supposed to race Verdance. I do feel like I played well-ish. There was a double blue turn that I mis-sequenced on, thinking that I would be able to end the turn with a written stars that would make an embodiment and draw me a card. There were two reasons this didn't work. One is I did not anticipate my Skizzik not having go again at the end of the chain. And while I could have used my Snapdragon Scalers to give the Skizzik go again and play my Written in the Stars to make an embodiment draw, this is the turn that Ravenous Rabble flipped a blue and let me know, well, I don't want to draw at the end of my turn because I don't want to arsenal this current funnel. There was just a lot of that in the game. I think James played well. His deck functioned. He did the thing. But this is a situation where maybe I'm just still salty about it, but I feel like it isn't so much that I lost to Verdance, it is that I lost to my deck, and it happened to be against Verdance. But even so, we are just playing for the next one, always trying to improve, and if nothing else, I still firmly believe that my Verdance plan is correct. It just didn't happen to work this time. So that puts us in the 2-1 bracket going into round 4. At this point, we cannot lose any more games. Top 8 is limited to X1. And if there is an X2 in this 7-round event, it would be the 5-0 who lost their last 2 games. So we cannot lose. We have to win 4 of the next 4. My next round is against Vynnset. This is a hero that I really have a love-hate relationship with. As you know, I punted against Peter Bedenzic's Vynnset in Calling London last week. Now that said, that did spur me to start practicing the matchup and really hone in on, I think I'm supposed to hard fatigue Vynnset. Is that true? Can I do that consistently? And my testing over the last week would indicate that yes, I can. So I think Vynnset is a tier A deck. She plays very well against Aurora, and she has positive matchups into other aggro decks. She does good things against Prism. She can be difficult for Enigma. So I think Vynnset is actually a tier A hero. That said, I have a detailed plan. I feel very prepared against Vynnset. I still think that it's about a 50% matchup, just based on how her big arcane turns line up with my blues and yellows. I did have to go second in this matchup, which is not where I want to be, and my Vynnset punished me by pitching to grass, making a rune chant on turn 1, getting that initial banish for a rune gate attack. But I still won this game at 11 life and 5 cards in deck to my opponent's 0 cards in deck and 0 life. Fatigue worked great. I was concerned at one point in the game where I counted 7 cards remaining in my deck to 14 cards remaining in my opponent's deck. I had banished 2 cards from my deck over the course of the game to widespread ruins that connected either through arcane or physical damage. But I was still thinking, how did this happen? I feel like I've navigated this game very well. How am I so far behind on deck? Well, the answer is that I was at 29 life to my opponent's 4. So at this point, we also have very little time remaining in the round. I decided, let's just start taking some damage and returning it. So I ended up, as I said, winning the game at 11. This is then based on me taking a little more damage to keep some cards in hand, pitch a blue, activate Grasp, attack with Starfall for 1 arcane and 1 physical damage, doing my best impersonation of Rosetta Thorn. And this also takes into account my opponent just banishing a card to their hero power every turn. The 5 cards left in my deck at the end of the game was Channel Lightning Valley, Snatch, and 3 current funnels. So I'm never taking arcane damage because I'm always pitching a blue. I have my 1 4-power attack that I can play if I need to, but for the most part my turn is just pitch blue, make rune chant, attack with Starfall, keep 2 other blues in my hand to pitch for Arcane Barrier. My takeaway from this game is that the fatigue strategy works great. I just keep on doing this. I do need to board out more reds to bring in Flicker Wisps. I didn't have them in because I wanted to be able to pivot over to aggression if the turn cycle lines up for it. Sometimes Vynnset does need to take an off turn and gives me space to say, here's a 3-card 12. Maybe you can play some defense reactions, but I'm still going to chip some damage over the top and just put you into a position where you start killing yourself to blood debt, or maybe you have another off turn and I get to put you down lower. You have to start respecting my physical damage, which means that you're blocking from hand so you can't go as wide on your turn. Over the course of the game, my Vynnset did have to block with some pretty unfortunate cards like Yellow Malefic Incantation and Shadow Puppetry, cards that she would have wanted to string bigger turns together. But overall, hard fatiguing Vynnset works, or at least works better than trying to race Vynnset. I honestly believe that Aurora cannot race Vynnset and win without just giga high rolling her. So the fatigue strategy works. We go 3-1, and we pair into an Oscilio in round 5. This Oscilio was piloted by Matthew. I would say it is a standard Oscilio build. We've been seeing a lot more Oscilio lately. I think this is in part to my local Stephen Leva, who was the one Oscilio at Pro Tour London last week and ended up finishing day 1 with a 4-4 record. He was on stream for round 2. Very good Oscilio player, and honestly my games against him at our local armories are how I was able to navigate this Oscilio matchup so well, and even then I almost lost. I do think that Oscilio, despite being a B tier deck, is favored into Aurora, because how Oscilio wins is by establishing this big combo with Fandal Spring Tunic, Lightning Greaves, Blast to Oblivion, Gone in a Flash, and Oscilio's various sigils. And all Oscilio needs to do to put this turn together is live long enough to draw the cards to do it, which means that Oscilio can play 6 defense reactions, a bunch of 3 blocks, can't just commit cards to defense when the combo doesn't line up quite right and buy time. Meanwhile, Aurora can brick, she can draw hands without go again, she also doesn't disrupt. So as long as Oscilio is alive at 1 life, unless Aurora can deal arcane damage on his turn and kill him, Oscilio always has the space to just fire off a 40 damage combo after playing Gone in a Flash 8 times and then ending the turn with Volzar into Spell. So I did manage to win this game at 6 life, but it was close, and really just based on my opponent flubbing the combo turn. And what that means is we get to turn 3, my opponent is at 6, his tunic goes to 3, he still has Lightning Greaves. I'm fully expecting what's about to happen here. I know that my opponent has Sigil of Brilliance. I have thankfully brought my Balance of Justice, so when my opponent plays Sigil, blasts it back to hand, plays Sigil, blasts it back to hand, draws 2 cards, I'll be able to break my balance, and either be able to pitch into Dyadic Carapace to pay for some Arcane Barrier or block with the card, or just have a bigger pop-off turn next turn, assuming I live. My opponent plays Gone in a Flash. I block with Balance, I take 2, my opponent plays Sigil of Brilliance, picks up Gone in a Flash, and then says, oh shit, because he did not use Tunic to break boots before playing the Sigil, meaning that he did not get an action point because Gone in a Flash did not have go again. So at this point he's a bit flustered, plays the Sigil of Solace, gains 3 life, then uses Tunic to break boots, and still fires off like a 30-point combo. It was still really good damage. And I did get out of that turn with 6 points left. Now, I won on the next turn. I had a big Arc Lightning Burn-Up Shock turn to crack back with. That being said, I think if my opponent does the combo correctly, they only get 5 more points out of the turn because they are able to play another Gone in a Flash, which is 4, and then Volzar gets another tick up to, I think it was 9 at the end of the turn. So 9 lightning cards, it goes up to 10 because there's another Gone in a Flash. That doesn't kill me. I had cards left in my hand when I won the game. One of them was a Skizzik, so I can at least block for 3. I'm able to preserve some life. So I don't think my opponent lost because they misplayed. They lost because, frankly, they had some poopy draws leading up to the combo turn. The 2 spells they ended turns 1 and 2 with were just Shock, which, if the shocks are Mind Warps or Etchings of the Arcane, then I'm at least taking more damage or getting disrupted. But I was lucky enough that my opponent just could not put enough damage together to kill me before I killed him. Did this affect how I view the matchup? No, it didn't. This is just a race, and unfortunately, Aurora loses that race most of the time. You're really counting on your deck to reward you and give you effective turn cycles, but you also kind of need your opponent's deck to just give them bad cards. Have 3 Gone in a Flashes in the bottom 20 cards of the deck, have no Blast to Oblivion, Sigil of Brilliance is missing. You really need them to just not get there. Fortunately, that is what happened. I am now 4-1 going into round 6 for my first Aurora mirror of the day. I was able to win this game. I won with 6 life remaining. I feel very confident in the Aurora mirror after my time in London. If you watch that tournament report, you know that I went into the mirror very inexperienced and really having to play catch up to where the other Auroras were. At this point, I feel very confident in the mirror, and that showed in how I sideboarded and how I navigated my opponent's Channel Lightning Valleys and Sigil of Sufferings. So, Aurora, S-tier deck, I have a very detailed matchup. I feel very prepared. Still a coin flip. I did manage to win the die roll and go second, which does help. I believe going second in the mirror is correct, but compared to something like the Phi mirror or maybe even the Zen mirror, it isn't so deterministic. If you lose the die roll in the Phi mirror, you basically lost the game, unless you just draw so much better than your opponent. But if you lose the die roll in the Aurora mirror, well, your Tunic goes to 1. Depending on your opening hand, you can send a bunch of damage, and depending on your opponent's opening hand, maybe they drew 2 non-blocks and just take 10 damage on turn 0. Now, neither of those things happened. I don't believe either player high rolled here. I do believe that my opponent outdrew me starting the game. So I wrote down that I started slower, was down on life, but was able to pivot off of a big arc lightning turn that had no CLV attached to it. It was just a lot of damage. Meanwhile, my opponent's crackback was pretty negligible. I did see D-reacts late. If I'd seen those D-reacts earlier, maybe I'm drawing from Sigil CLV. But at the very least, I'm blocking for 4 instead of for 2 and 3. And the late D-reacts actually did prevent me from winning the game for a few turns longer than either of us were expecting the game to last. Because I had these turn cycles of attack for 4, go again, pitch a card to Starfall, make an embodiment, end the turn, because the last card in my hand is a Sink Below, and I bring Zap Clappers into the mirror, so I'm not able to pitch into Grasp of the Arknight to make a rune chant to at least tax my opponent's hand or Spring Tunic. So it really was like a crawl to end this game. It was a struggle, but we did get there. Did this change how I view the matchup? No. I do think that if I am boarding out Scar for a Scar or Second Strike, that actually instead of boarding out Scar, I should be boarding out Second Strike. I hate cutting lightning cards for my deck. I already cut my current funnels. I'm not playing Written in the Stars in this matchup, so I hate bringing my lightning count lower, but man, Second Strike sucks sometimes. If your opponent has a blue to pitch to Arc Lightning and you really needed to deal that arcane damage with to turn on your Second Strike, that might just ruin your turn. Or if they prevent your burn-up shock, which Spring Tunic, maybe you needed that arcane damage to turn on Second Strike. And yes, Second Strike is conditional compared to Scar for a Scar. If you're winning the game, Scar is not going to have Go Again. But even without Go Again, Scar at least attacks for 4, unlike Second Strike, which only attacks for 3. So it was just something I noticed over the course of the day as I'm boarding out Scar for a Scar to bring in 2 copies of Sink Below. A lot of the time I would draw Second Strike and think, man, I wish this was Scar for a Scar right now. So, something to think about. That does put me 5-1, playing in my winning in to top 8. This was against Raheel, playing Fang. Now, I have never played against a Fang before, at least not in a tournament setting. I've played against Fang in practice, but never had to sit down against one to play for battle-hardened top 8. I think that Fang is probably a C-tier hero, but this is just based on tier lists from other content creators who, as you know, we're always looking to start a fight. I have a basic idea of how to deal with Fang. I had received a tip that this is a daggers-based Fang, so what you would expect Fang to look like, as opposed to something like Decimator Great Axe. But even so, I have a very rusty idea of how to play this matchup. To my understanding, we just race. Now, I do think we're 55% to win the matchup, because if we are just racing, it's hard to outrace Aurora, especially for Fang, who plays very few blues, very few yellows, a lot of reds, which means I'm expecting him to be AB0. That was the case. He was also Spell Void 0. So I won this game at 3. It was a really tight game. I had good arc lightnings, I had good go again draws. I went second, so I was able to outrace a little bit easier. I blocked for 5 on turn 0, somersaulted my cards back to hand, and then was able to pitch into Aurora, so I set up really well. I think the game just went the way I needed it to go. I did have one turn of a little inspired brilliance where I had drawn a burn-up shock off of a snatch. My opponent knew that I drew a burn-up shock because I had revealed it with Ravenous Rabble, so I arsenaled the burn-up shock, lived through my opponent's turn. Or at least based on what they are presenting to me, I know that I am going to live through their turn. My opponent at this point, I believe, is at 4 and has Valiant Dynamo and 1 point of armor left on Brave Forge Bracers and Grains of Bloodspill. So I know that Burn-Up Shock is very unlikely to hit. My hand is Entwine Lightning, Electromagnetic Somersault, Scar for a Scar, and a defense reaction, Sigil of Suffering. So I'm trying to save the Sigil of Suffering for my arsenal so that I can hopefully deal the lethal point of damage after my opponent unwisely goes to 1, or at least I can stop a dagger. So I end up blocking with Crown of Providence to sink my arsenal and draw a card off the top of the deck and drew into a Scar for a Scar, which ended up being very fortunate because I ended the turn at lower life than my opponent. So it can go Scar for a Scar, Scar for a Scar, Somersault, Scar for a Scar, Entwine Lightning, just send a 4-card 16, get every card from my opponent's hand. Their turn is free dagger for 1, anticipating losing the fealty at the end of the turn, and then I play Channel Lightning Valley, Sigil of Suffering, put them to 2, draw another card, and then kill them the next turn. So things just kind of broke my way. This game didn't change how I view the matchup, but it did make me feel more confident that I know what this matchup is about, which is we are just racing. Something I do want to try in the future is maybe playing Tunic if I have to go first. Fang does do good, efficient damage, but he isn't, like, giga racing us. He isn't going that fast. So maybe we don't need the 2 points of life from Dyadic Carapace. We can just play with Tunic, and that lets us get an extra Starfall in every 3 turns for something like Channel Lightning Valley, Arc Lightning, Burn-Up Shock. But going second, I think Carapace was the correct call. And at this point, we are 6-1, we're locked for top 8, and we do make it into top 8 as the 7th seed. So already I'm ecstatic. I've won $125, I get a Summit playmat, I top 8 at a Battle Hardened for the first time, I'm feeling like, okay, we've really internalized the lessons from London, we have our confidence, we're feeling very validated. Let's see how much farther we can go. So as 7th seed, I pair into 2nd seed, Anthony Pham, for the second Aurora mirror of the day. Standard Aurora, Anthony is playing Face Purgatory, and because he chooses to go second, he's playing Dyadic Carapace. We talked about this after the game. He just feels like the consistency for going second is more helpful than the Tunic counter that he is behind on because he's going second. No, I do disagree with that. I think that Tunic is the play first or second. My Tunic was very impactful over the course of the game, preventing multiple instances of arcane damage that would have drawn a card from Channel Lightning Valley. It gets an extra Starfall in over the course of the game, especially towards the end, as I'm just trying to strip cards in order to live. But for the most part, Anthony had a really good plan. He was playing Grasp of the Arknight as opposed to my Zap Clappers, and while my Clappers did threaten a Channel Lightning Valley draw early in the game, the extra point, the extra 1 point of life from Grasp was very helpful at stopping breakpoints. And as Anthony was playing blues in his deck, the extra go again from Grasp was really nice on an Arc Lightning turn. And the Rune Chants were also good at just incremental damage. So I had a strong start. I had early Channel Lightning Valleys. I had early Sigil of Sufferings. My Clappers threatened to draw a card from Channel Lightning Valley, so over the course of the first 2 turns, I denied Anthony 2 arsenals because he had to pitch a red in order to pay for AP1 so that I don't draw a card. He did have a turn cycle that I called him on, and I felt scummy for this. We talked about it after the game, and he sort of absolved me of scumbaggery. The situation is Anthony plays Entwine Lightning, fuses it with Electromagnetic Somersault, I take 4 points of damage, and Anthony says, in resolution, I play Somersault. Now, I confirm with the judge who's sitting next to us, players don't have priority in resolution. So Anthony cannot play somersault here. The rules change that happened a few months ago says that in order to somersault, you have to play in damage. So the judge rules that Anthony does not get his Entwined Lightning back. He does get to keep his somersault. Ultimately, I don't think this mattered. This was a turn where I got to play Sigil of Suffering with Channel Lightning Valley out. So Anthony pitches his red to pay for the AB. Whether it is somersault or Entwined Lightning, I think the outcome is the same. It did just make me feel like, maybe I should have given this to him. Say, I know what you were trying to do. You just said the wrong thing, but in any case, I thought I played well against Faced Purgatory. The Purg did just block for 2 at some point later in the game. The effect was never active. I almost died with equipment, so I won this game at 2, but I still had my Tunic and my Lightning Greaves, neither of which had blocked, and my Tunic was not going to be back up by the time I won the game. This was also in part because I missed a Tunic counter towards the end of the game, and having just denied my opponent the take back for that somersault 10 minutes earlier, I felt like not a good time to ask if I could have my Tunic counter. So that is something where I should have found opportunities earlier to just block for value. If I can win the game at 4, I feel a lot better than winning the game at 2, where maybe I have to play my last card in order to threaten lethal, and then I get hit with the Sigil of Suffering shock and die. As it so happens, that's how I won the game. Anthony goes down to 1, sends a Snatch for 4, threatening lethal. I get to block with my Lightning Greaves and a Sigil of Suffering from hand. Anthony pitches his last card in hand, a red Shelter from the Storm, to pay for the AB, and then I shock him. So staying at higher life would absolutely have been better, but we did get there in any case. My takeaways from this game is that I do want to try Grasp of the Arknight, especially if I am going second. Maybe it's first or second dependent, just based on do I want the consistency or not. I don't play blues in the mirror, I board them all out, so it isn't like I'm ever pitching to Grasp of the Arknight, but especially if I'm going first, just having the option to pitch 2 reds and make a rune chant gets me 1 point of value, whereas if I'm playing Zap Clappers and I don't have a lightning card that I can play to turn on Aurora, then I do just Arsenal pass and get really no value from going first, so it's something to think about. At this point, I'm in the top 4, and I sit down against Daniel, who's playing Enigma, and I lose this game. So, Enigma, S-tier deck, of course. I played the Aurora Enigma matchup a million times. I feel prepared for it. I feel good about the matchup. I feel favored. Really, the matchup comes down to, does Enigma play Miragai, or do I play Arc Lightning first? And in this case, Enigma played Miragai. Now, I drew 2 brick hands and never saw an Arc Lightning. I saw both of my Flicker Wisps before I saw Arc Lightning, and if I had seen an Arc Lightning instead of the second Flicker Wisp, this is a very different game. Now, that being said, I did punt turn 2. I had a hard time figuring out the sequencing for this turn, and it only came to me on the drive home. So the setup is I have Embodiment of Lightning from my turn 1, and I have a Channel Lightning Valley. So I play E-Strike, bottom a card, draw Entwined Lightning. My opponent covers the 5 with a defense reaction and a Rage Spectre. I play Entwined Lightning, fuse it with Lightning Press. My opponent blocks for 3, and at this point I should play the Lightning Press to have played a Lightning card in the turn, but I'm sitting on a Snatch in my arsenal, and I really want to Lightning Press the Snatch. So I just let the Entwined Lightning hit, deal a point of damage, draw a card from Channel Lightning Valley. It is a Written in the Stars. So now my hand is E-Strike, Press, Written in the Stars, and my arsenal is Snatch. I'm just having a really hard time figuring out what to do with this hand. How do I maximize the value? And in particular, how do I press the Snatch without using my Snapdragon Scalers? And I just cannot think of a way, because what I really want to have done is played the press on the Entwined Lightning so that I can pitch the Written in the Stars to attack with Starfall, and then even then I can't do what I want to do, which is play the E-Strike, draw a card, make an embodiment and arsenal, because the E-Strike is in my hand, the Snatch is an arsenal. So what I end up doing is E-Strike for 7, press it, get it up to 10. What I should have done is E-Strike for 5, go again, bottom written in the stars, then play Snatch for 4 and press it up to 7. And if I take that line, then the card I draw from Snatch is Lightning Surge, which is the lightning starter I need on my next turn, because my next turn, now that I still have Snatch in my arsenal, is Exude, Lightning Surge, another Snatch, and like Flittering Charge or something. Just this really unworkable hand that I have to snap to even make something out of, and then my next turn is like Flicker Wisp, Somersault, Skizzic. So just a couple of brick hands. Now, Enigma was also not drawing well. Enigma had 3 Chi at one point. I was really struggling to find a way to use it, but just the fact that she was able to find the Mirror Guy before I can find the Arc Lightning, and then have the Chi in the deck defined with Traverse the Universe, says that she was able to put that big turn together before I could find my big turn, and I end up losing the game. So I don't feel too bad about it. I felt like it was a combination of things. My deck let me down, but I also didn't help the situation because I also played poorly. And maybe if I navigate those first few turns a little better, then I just put Enigma far enough on the back foot that I can buy enough time to find my Arc Flicker that wins me the game. So it was a good learning lesson. I felt like I was tired at the end of the day. Maybe if I'm a little more alert, then I can find that line on turn 2, but as it was, Enigma played really well, and if I had to lose to someone, I'm glad it was them. They did go on to lose to Tao Tao in the finals, Marionette beating out Enigma, and then Tao Tao opened Gold Foil Mask of Deceit, so it felt like, justice done. If anyone was going to open Mask of Deceit, nice that it is the Marionette player. Overall, really great event, really happy to top 4. Big motivational moment for me, very validating, very self-affirming, and I'm feeling a lot better about myself as a Flesh and Blood player, and I'm ready to go into ProQuest season, and am ready to prep for US Nats in June. I hope you have enjoyed this tournament report. If so, be sure to clap that like button. My comments are always open for any questions or feedback. If you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to my channel. It's free. It helps me a lot. I have a Blue Sky, a Discord, and a Patreon, links to which are in the video description below. If you want to get your own Codex journal so that you can take notes and reflections like I did, use the link in the video description and code Lupine10, it's Lupine 10 at checkout. I will be back later this week with the daily Fab gameplay that you've all been denied for so long. And until then, take care.